Hello, I'm Silent Payback. Before we dive into this, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? Go ahead, pause for a moment and type it out in the comments or just think about it. Maybe it's late at night, maybe it's the middle of the day. Wherever you are, and whatever time it is, I want you to know this story you're about to hear isn't just some random internet creepypasta or fictional bedtime tale. It's something else entirely, something that unsettles even the most skeptical minds. Something that has haunted places and people for decades. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I found myself assigned to the SCP Foundation not too long ago. If you don't know, the Foundation is a secret organization tasked with containing and researching anomalies, things that defy our understanding of reality. They're the kind of things that keep governments awake at night, the kind of things no one talks about publicly, and one of the first things I was briefed on was SCP-173, the thing that everyone calls the sculpture, but trust me, it's anything but a harmless statue. I still remember my first encounter with SCP-173 like it was yesterday. The briefing was cold and clinical, but the files were disturbing. SCP-173 is described as a humanoid statue, made from concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon spray paint. At first glance, it looks like a crude, almost childlike sculpture of a humanoid figure crouched low to the ground. But what made it terrifying wasn't its appearance. It was the way it moved. You see, SCP-173 is completely immobile when it's being observed. The moment you blink or look away, it moves incredibly fast, fast enough to snap a person's neck before they even realize what happened. It can move faster than the eye can see, stalking its target silently and lethally. That means one very simple but terrifying rule: you must never break eye contact. The containment procedures were strict and unforgiving. At all times, at least two people must maintain direct line of sight with SCP-173. They must blink in a coordinated manner, never allowing the statue to move unnoticed. The room where SCP-173 is kept is a small concrete cell, with smooth walls and a single steel door. Underneath the statue is a layer of camera feed, monitored constantly, to make sure it hasn't moved. When I was first told this, I didn't think it was that big a deal. Just don't look away seemed simple enough. But that assumption shattered the moment I stepped into the containment chamber for the first time. I remember walking into that dimly lit chamber, the air thick and cold, smelling faintly of concrete dust and sterile cleaning agents. The door shut behind me with a heavy clang, locking us inside with SCP-173. It was crouched in the corner, the dim overhead lights casting long shadows across its rough concrete surface. Its faceless head was tilted slightly, like it was observing me even though I was watching it. My partner, a more experienced Foundation staffer, told me to keep my eyes on it at all times and to blink only when he blinked. We took turns blinking, a ritual as tense as a life or death game of chicken. The seconds dragged on, stretched thin with the unbearable tension of holding your eyelids open. The silence was deafening. In that silence, I could hear the faintest sounds, the soft hum of the ventilation system, the distant echoes of footsteps in the corridors beyond, even the faint ticking of my own heartbeat. But mostly, there was SCP-173, completely still, just waiting. I kept reminding myself, don't blink, don't look away, but fatigue started creeping in. My eyes stung, my vision blurred at the edges. The pressure to maintain perfect vigilance was suffocating. Suddenly, my partner stifled a gasp. I glanced his way, and for a brief moment, he blinked out of sync with me. The statue had moved. It was now inches closer. It was the first time I saw SCP-173 move, and it was terrifying beyond words. It lunged with impossible speed. I barely had time to react before it was on the other side of the room. Its limbs stretched in unnatural ways, its head twisted slightly like a predator locking onto prey. That's when I realized this thing didn't just kill to survive. It hunted, it stalked. It was pure instinct and malice, driven by some unknown compulsion to end life as soon as it had the chance. My partner and I barely escaped with our lives that day. The security protocols were instantly updated after the incident, but it was clear that SCP-173 was more dangerous than any of us had initially believed. I want you to imagine that moment with me. The cold concrete underfoot, the stale air, the crushing silence, and that statue inching closer in sudden, terrifying bursts whenever you blink. That's the reality of SCP-173, a relentless, predatory force that exists in the blink of an eye. Over the next segments, I'll tell you more about the Foundation's attempts to contain it, what happens when containment fails, and the stories of those who didn't survive. But for now, I want you to keep your eyes open. Don't blink. Before we get started, I want to check in again. Where are you listening from? Has the time changed since last we spoke? It's important you stay aware because awareness is the only thing standing between you and the thing I'm about to describe. If you blink, you won't get a second chance. After my first encounter, I quickly learned that SCP-173 was not just a physical threat but a psychological one. It was a test of nerves, discipline, and willpower. The Foundation's containment protocols were strict, but in theory, in practice, they felt fragile, brittle against the sheer unpredictability of what it really was. The two-person eye contact rule seemed straightforward on paper, but it demanded near-perfect synchronization. One moment of human weakness and accidental glance away, a careless blink out of sequence and the consequences were catastrophic. Personnel assigned to SCP-173 quickly developed an uneasy camaraderie, bonded by shared terror and exhaustion. The mundane tasks of cleaning, observation, or relocation became exercises in nerve and vigilance. Every shift felt like staring into the abyss, knowing the abyss blinked back. What struck me most was how the containment area itself seemed designed to heighten the tension. The concrete cell was small and cramped, offering no real escape routes or hiding places. The lighting was dim and flickering. Sometimes a bulb would hum with electrical interference, or a faint shadow would play tricks on your eyes. You could hear the faint scrape of SCP-173 against the floor if it moved, but only when you were paying attention. Otherwise, silence reigned thick and suffocating. On one occasion, I remember how a junior staffer accidentally dropped a clipboard inside the chamber. The sudden clatter caused both of us to reflexively blink at the same time. For a split second, the statue moved. It was almost surreal how quick it was, a blur of concrete and twisted limbs snapping towards us. We barely scrambled back through the door in time, hearts pounding, lungs gasping for air. The Foundation responded by tightening the rules. Shifts were reduced, rotating pairs of observers replaced single individuals, and cameras were installed to cover every angle. Still, the mental strain was crushing. Many of us began to notice subtle effects: micro-sleeps during shift changes, the slow tremble in hands that tried to stay steady, the dry eyes from constant staring. The fear was contagious and insidious. Even outside the chamber, you'd feel it lurking in your peripheral vision. I heard rumors about some researchers becoming so obsessed with SCP-173 that they'd never want to leave its sight. They said it got into their heads, changing how they saw the world. One story that stuck with me was about Dr. Klein, a senior researcher who had spent months studying SCP-173. He'd confided in a colleague that he sometimes felt like the statue was watching him even when he wasn't supposed to be. Not physically watching, but mentally, like some malevolent presence that followed him everywhere. Shortly after, Dr. Klein was found unresponsive in his apartment. His eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling, but the cause of death was determined as cardiac arrest, likely brought on by extreme stress and sleep deprivation. It made me realize that SCP-173's danger wasn't just physical, it was psychological. It warps reality, breaks your mind before it can break your neck. Containment breaches were terrifyingly rare, but when they happened, the results were devastating. The official reports were clinical and censored, but whispers circulated of entire security teams wiped out in seconds. The rooms where SCP-173 was housed became crime scenes littered with fractured bones and crushed necks. Sometimes worse. During one breach, the statue was accidentally left alone in a larger holding area after a power failure disabled the surveillance cameras. The response team that arrived found the place eerily silent. Not a single survivor. The only evidence was the statue, sitting quietly in its corner, surrounded by the grisly remains of those who had looked away. That kind of horror made all of us hypervigilant. The Foundation took SCP-173's containment so seriously that entire wings were dedicated to it, staffed 24/7. We wore special equipment, headlamps, tactical visors, designed to reduce eye strain during long observation shifts. We used timers to coordinate blinking and force breaks every few minutes. Still, the exhaustion and dread never fully left. The tension clung to us like a shadow, and some of the older staff had permanent nervous tics, constant scanning of their surroundings, always aware that something was just outside their vision. As I spent more time around SCP-173, I began to notice something else. It wasn't just a statue, it was something ancient, something unnatural. The way it moved defied physics, the way it waited in silence was almost intelligent. I started piecing together the fragments of history about SCP-173, where it came from, who built it, or what it was made of. The file had no clear origin story. It was discovered in an abandoned warehouse in the late 1990s, but rumors hinted that SCP-173 or things like it had been witnessed before, described as the sculpture that kills, a living nightmare lurking in shadows. What haunted me most was the unanswered question: why? Why does SCP-173 move only when you blink? Why is it so deadly? Is it hunting for something? Or simply compelled by a primal instinct to kill? Every night, when the lights dim and silence settles, I find myself wondering if it's out there right now, waiting just beyond sight. So as you listen, wherever and whenever you are, remember this: SCP-173 is real inside these walls. And every blink you take is a small gamble with something that never blinks back. Asterisk: if you're alone, keep the lights on. Keep your eyes open, because what I'm about to share isn't just a story. It's a glimpse into a nightmare that waits. In the blink of an eye, containment breaches are the stuff of horror legends inside the Foundation. And with SCP-173, breaches weren't just failures, they were tragedies of unimaginable scale. The first breach I heard about was during an equipment transfer. Power flickered off in the facility, plunging the containment chamber into darkness. The cameras went dead, and the emergency lights were dim and unreliable. By the time the backup generators kicked in, security personnel found themselves facing a scene from hell. SCP-173 was missing from its enclosure. The hallways were silent but littered with signs of a desperate struggle: scattered debris, overturned carts, and the unmistakable sound of cracking bones. I remember reading the debrief reports. One security officer survived, barely, thanks to sheer luck. He described a horrifying experience of running through corridors, never daring to blink, with the statue snapping at his heels. He said the creature moved faster than anything he'd ever seen. No matter how fast he ran or how careful he was, SCP-173 closed the distance relentlessly. The officer's voice trembled as he recounted how, in a final desperate move, he managed to trap SCP-173 in an airlock chamber, sealing it off with an emergency door. But those kinds of stories aren't isolated. Over the years, the Foundation logged dozens of incidents, each terrifying in its own way. Sometimes, SCP-173 would be found in impossible places: a room it shouldn't have been able to reach, a sealed closet, or even a stairwell. How it moved through solid walls or locked doors remains a mystery. Some theorize it phases through matter or teleports during blinks. Others believe it simply manipulates time in brief bursts to move unseen, but no one knows for sure. One of the most chilling breaches involved a group of researchers performing a routine cleaning of the containment cell. They entered in pairs, cameras rolling to document the procedure. One researcher accidentally dropped a mop handle. As both staff instinctively blinked to respond, SCP-173 moved. The result was catastrophic. One researcher was snapped in half before anyone could react. The other barely escaped, traumatized and shaking. The Foundation subsequently implemented stricter containment protocols. No one is allowed inside SCP-173's chamber alone. Surveillance is continuous, with redundant camera feeds monitored by teams in shifts. Blink coordination drills became mandatory training for all personnel assigned to SCP-173. Despite all precautions, accidents still happen, proof that no system is infallible when dealing with something so unpredictable and deadly. But what fascinated me more than the breaches was the mystery surrounding SCP-173's origin. It's an enigma wrapped in layers of speculation. The official file says it was discovered in an abandoned warehouse in 1993. But there are rumors of similar statues in folklore and urban legend dating back centuries. Some accounts speak of living statues guarding ancient temples or cursed places, silent sentinels that kill intruders the moment they break eye contact. Could SCP-173 be a modern manifestation of an ancient curse? Or perhaps an otherworldly entity trapped in concrete and paint? Inside the Foundation, I heard whispers about a secret research project attempting to understand SCP-173's nature at a molecular level. They wanted to know what made it move only when unobserved. Was it a creature tied to human perception, a predator exploiting our biological need to blink, or something far more sinister, an entity that exists partly outside our reality, blinking in and out like a shadow? Some scientists proposed that SCP-173 operates on a principle called quantum observation, where reality itself changes, depending on whether it is being observed. The idea is terrifying if you look away, even for a moment. The rules governing SCP-173 shift, allowing it to move at impossible speeds. This might explain why it has no vocalization, no obvious motive beyond killing, and why it seems to defy physical barriers on a personal level. SCP-173 challenged everything I thought I knew about fear. I realized it was less about physical harm and more about the helplessness, the feeling that at any moment, everything could end because of a simple, involuntary blink. It made me question reality itself. How much of the world around us depends on constant observation? And what happens in the dark spaces in between? As I tell you this, I want you to keep your eyes wide open. The next time you blink, remember that somewhere, in a place you can't see, something might be moving. And when you open your eyes again, will it still be where you left it, or will it have taken one step closer? Before we finish, tell me, where are you now? What time is it? Are you still alone, or is someone else nearby? Keep those questions in mind, because what I'm about to share will linger long after you stop listening. Because SCP-173 isn't just a contained object in a secret facility, it's a symbol of something darker, a force that reminds us how fragile our perception of reality really is. Over time, many of the Foundation's finest have faced SCP-173 and many have not come back. Their names are quietly removed from records, their stories erased or sanitized. But among the staff, their memories live on like ghosts in the hallways. Each loss is a reminder of how thin the line is between safety and catastrophe. One of the most haunting tales I've heard was about a late-night maintenance crew. The team was sent to clean the containment cell after a scheduled power outage. The usual two-person eye contact rule was followed, but exhaustion had dulled their senses. One blink was mistimed. One glance missed. That was enough. When emergency crews arrived hours later, they found the chamber empty. The team was nowhere to be found. All that remained was a faint smear on the concrete floor, like a shadow had dragged itself away into the darkness. Stories like that make you realize that SCP-173 isn't just a physical threat, it's an existential one. It forces us to confront the limits of human perception and the unknown forces lurking beyond. We live in a world where blinking is involuntary, where shadows hide more than just the absence of light. And somewhere in those shadows waits SCP-173. As I close this, I want to leave you with a final thought. Next time you find yourself blinking, try to hold your eyes open just a little longer. Feel the tension, the tightrope of awareness stretched thin, because the moment you blink, even for a fraction of a second, you might not just be closing your eyes, you might be inviting something to move. Thank you for listening. I'm Silent Payback. Remember to tell me where you're from and what time it is now. Stay vigilant. Keep your eyes open, and never, ever blink alone.